Welcome everyone to another edition of the Lumu Flash Talk. Today we're having a conversation about how all ways aren't good enough and best practices for cybersecurity. And to do so, I'm honored to be joined by Brigadier General retired Gregory J. Touhill. Greg Touhill spent over 30 years with the U.S. Armed Forces, where he was a pioneer in the field that today we recognize as cybersecurity. He rose up the ranks to be appointed by President Obama as the United States' first federal chief information security officer. He then served as president of Appgate Federal Group, and currently, General Touhill serves as the director at CERT Division at the Software Engineering Institute based at Carnegie Mellon University. General Touhill, welcome to the Flash Talk, and thank you for your service.
Well, thank you very much, Ricardo. It's a pleasure to join you today.
I'm glad that you had the time to speak with us today, and let's get right to it. I'm sure our audience is eager to hear from you. First off, could you give us an overall assessment of the state of cybersecurity? What do you see today?
Well, at this point, and here we are at the middle of September 2021, we are, as a cyber ecosystem, we continue to be ravaged by nation-state actors that are trying to seek a competitive advantage and peeking into critical infrastructure, government infrastructure. We see cyber criminal groups that continue to be engaged in activity attacking critical infrastructure, the financial services sector, and we are seeing many companies, particularly in the healthcare sector and small and medium businesses, that are plagued by ransomware and other malicious code bases that we're seeing being employed around the world. So as a result, I would say that the state of cybersecurity right now is unsettled around the world because we have an increasingly important amount of critical infrastructure that is heavily reliant on information technology. And we have more and more data that is at risk. And that continues to provide a great amount of risk, not only to organizations, but individuals themselves. And that includes civil rights, civil liberties, and privacy, which I believe all three of those attributes should be part of the conversation on cybersecurity. And as I look forward into FY or fiscal year 22, I think we're going to see even more discussion on privacy as being an important component of the cyber ecosystem.
Unsettled around the world. That's a good way to put it. And it's affecting every enterprise today, small or large. And the next question, I'd like to get your perspective on two different scenarios. Right? The first is, what if I am a small company that doesn't know where to start? What should I focus on first? What is your advice to those small companies out there?
Well, one of the biggest problems that we're seeing with our research at Carnegie Mellon University is that many organizations, and it's not just the small and medium businesses, most organizations don't really have a very good handle on what type of data they have, what its value is, and where it is. So as you are taking a look as a small and medium business in particular, as to what your cybersecurity posture is, step one is taking a really good inventory of your data. Know who should, what type of data you have, where it is, and who should see it, and under what conditions. We're finding around the world with our research that most organizations fall short of having a good control and positive control over their data. And they're unclear as far as what their inventory of their data is, where it is located, where it resides, and then further, who should access it, and under what conditions. Many organizations have not defined those roles. And as you take a look at some of the best practices in cybersecurity, zero trust is an increasingly important security strategy, and it relies on those data inventories. So that's where I would start, is with your data.
That's great. And when we don't know what data we have, it's hard to identify how to protect that data, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I beg your pardon. One of the things too is once you identify your data, not all data is equal. So you may not want to try to protect everything equally. And that's also something that's a consideration with the zero trust security strategy. Too many folks try to protect everything the same, and not all data is of equal importance.
It becomes impractical. Yes.
Exactly.
Now let's go back to the other scenario. Let's assume I am a big company with a very big cybersecurity stack, and probably a costly one, right? But my team is drawing in alerts. What is the advice for those companies?
Well, there's some great security incident and event management capabilities that are out there, but it's very easy for organizations, particularly the large organizations that have huge network enterprises, to drown in all the alerts that are out there. So you really do have to start, and once again, data is the key. Understanding what data is important, tiering it, prioritizing it, and for every CISSP or CISM that's out there, it's part of the common body of knowledge that a best practice for a security operations center is to categorize, prioritize, and be very aware of the sensitivity of data. And when you do that, then you can organize your security operations center, your alerting, so that you can really understand what's important, what's less important, and then you tier your response and your alert and warning systems. We, as a professional military officer, we certainly learned that you can't be successful in the physical kinetic world without being able to do priorities and to segment and segregate. And the same principles of security come to play in the cyber world. So I think it's really important that you, in fact, do prioritize and don't get caught up by every single alert. You need to be able to discern what is really important and what are things that can wait.
That's a great advice, General. And it's something that we see with the thousands of customers that we have around the world. They value the fact that Lumu enables them to identify the instances of confirmed compromises so that they can prioritize their actions upon those specific incidents. Let's switch into your CISO role with the United States. What were the biggest challenges that you dealt with at the time?
Well, as the very first federal chief information security officer, I had the organizational bureaucracy issues that I had to deal with, working with the Congress and the different departments and agencies to make sure that folks understood what authorities the role had and what the job actually was, as I had a hand in defining it. But as the chief information security officer, I focused on risk and resilience as the principal themes of the role of the chief information security officer, and enabling the business of government. Every chief information security officer should be viewed as a business enabler, as opposed to the person who just says, no, you can't do that because of security. So I focused on how do we get the mission done with the balance of risk and resilience as well as the mission. And from a prioritization standpoint, I also realized as a government official, I had to pick wisely. And one of the things that I prioritized above all else was making sure that our privileged user access was in fact protected through multi-factor authentication. And I did that based upon evidence-based analysis of issues that we had in not only the federal government, but also in the military as well as in the private sector. And we were clearly seeing that a lot of organizations were still using username and password as an identity and access management construct. And that was insufficient for the threat environment. I had the metrics. We pulsed and measured. We used our tools, and we were able to quantify what our compliance rate was for privileged users with multi-factor authentication front ends or access controls. And we made it a goal, and I briefed every month to the President's Management Council, which consisted of the deputy secretaries of all the major departments, and showed, first of all, what the threat was, why what the business case was for making sure that we had multi-factor authentication for our privileged user accounts, and what the return would be. And over the course of my time as the Federal Chief Information Security Officer, we were very successful in increasing our multi-factor authentication compliance rate from below 40% to nearly 90% in just 6 months. So you got to pick your battles wisely, but you have to make sure that it is a team effort and you're showing how you're adding value to the mission accomplishment.
It's incredible what you did at the time, and it's interesting and as an advice for all the enterprises and small businesses that are watching this show today. Those capabilities, the MFA is actually a capability that is built in most of the SaaS technologies that they have available at their disposal. Now, on that same topic, there have been a number of statements and memorandums and executive orders and appointments coming from the White House this year on cybersecurity. Have you seen some of these challenges being addressed?
Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, when President Biden came in and issued his cybersecurity executive order, I was very heartened by it. But, one of the things that's been really good about the cybersecurity community working within the federal government, but also contributing to the broader conversation on policies, legislation, regulations, et cetera, is that we have largely, as a community, tried to keep cybersecurity as an apolitical issue, meaning that we've tried to keep the politics from touching cybersecurity and driving a lot of the cybersecurity initiatives that have been going on. And the Biden administration executive order built on the lessons learned from Trump administration, Obama administration, Bush administration, Clinton administration, and so forth. But I was really pleased to see a lot of different initiatives that we had been promoting while I was still in federal service, such as the Zero Trust Security Strategy, such as setting up a cybersecurity review board, kind of like an accident investigation board, so that we could in fact have a disciplined approach to taking a look at significant cyber incidents through a lens like we would do with an airplane crash or a transportation issue. Greater sharing of information through substantive programs such as the Joint Cyber Defense Collaborative initiative that's ongoing. So we're building common playbooks for cyber incident responses, but also to inform our cyber exercises, because that makes us, a cyber exercise program makes you more proactive than reactive to a cyber incident. So those are three right off the bat. There's many more in that cyber executive order, but I'm very enthused and encouraged by the progress we've been making over the last couple of years. And just independent of all the administrations that have come and gone, we continue to raise our game when it comes to federal cybersecurity practices and programs.
When you see the rest of the world, General Touhill, do you think that the governments of other countries should also move in the direction of sending the signal to their enterprises that cybersecurity is something to be taken carefully? Is that
Absolutely.
the way?
Absolutely. And I'm very fortunate in the fact that in my current position at Carnegie Mellon, we of course are a federally funded research and development center at the Software Engineering Institute, but we work across a broader ecosystem and work with international partners. And I also serve as chairman of the ISACA Board of Directors. And ISACA is a nonprofit. It's a global organization of over 150,000 cybersecurity auditor and controller personnel. And we work as far as a global community. We're increasingly working through numerous fora out there to improve best practices, sharing of information, and in talking with folks in Asia and in Australia, New Zealand, Mexico, Germany, UK, through South America, Africa, I find that there's a lot of uniformity with a lot of government officials, but also business people in every single continent out there, where folks recognize that national security and national prosperity are intrinsically linked to a safe and secure cyber ecosystem, and that they're in the traditional borders of countries don't necessarily have the same play when it comes to the cyber ecosystem. So as a result, we see greater collaboration, we see increased information sharing amongst people around the world, and particularly with governments out there. And I'm very proud of the fact that our State Department and the cyber coordinator for the State Department here in the United States has really been taking a leading role to help build partnership capacity in sharing best practices from the United States with governments around the world. So I'm encouraged, but there's still a whole lot of work that needs to be done.
Definitely. Now let's switch to another topic that is from interest from our audience. With the transition to the cloud in full swing and enterprises hitting configuration issues and the like that is leading to exfiltration of data, how important is developing visibility into the cloud portion of the networks?
I think it's essential, Ricardo, and particularly as you have the shared security model that is prevalent with most major cloud providers. And for audience members who aren't familiar with that shared security model, I encourage you to go take a look at cloud providers' documents that talk about the security model. The vast majority of them will have like a chart that will say, okay, here's the security things that we will do to protect the infrastructure of the cloud. But then here are your responsibilities as somebody who is residing in the cloud that we provide. And that shared security model is not well understood by many folks, particularly in small and medium businesses that don't necessarily have a very robust professional full-time information technology and cybersecurity staff. So having the visibility into the cloud assets all the way down into the container level is critically important to assess your risk and your resilience from a standpoint of business continuity. And understanding that cybersecurity shared service model is something that, as you are making business decisions, as you are assessing your risk and resilience, you have to be very well aware as to what the roles and responsibilities are of your vendor, as well as what your roles and responsibilities are as a consumer in the cloud. And we're doing some great research at Carnegie Mellon and the Software Engineering Institute and my CERT team to take a look at, what are some of those best practices and what are some of those great lessons learned. And I expect that our research, which we'll probably have something published in early 22, that should be helpful. But all of us, don't wait for us to publish our research. Do your homework right now and go take a look at those shared services, that shared services model for security.
Interesting. So visibility in the cloud is a must.
Absolutely. And we, don't count on just your vendor providing you your security. You've got a role to play as well. And that's why you need to be capable of having visibility throughout the entire infrastructure stack all the way down into the containers themselves.
That's cool. I like to quote something that Bruce Nair, who I'm sure you know very well, he used to say in one of the books that to measure the security of a system, you have to measure the system entirely. And when you get that analogy into how the workflows are moving into the cloud, well, you have to include the cloud as part of your ecosystem that you have to measure. Let's switch into another topic. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, and it's not just a single cloud. Most folks are engaged in a hybrid cloud environment with multiple clouds. If you're operating with a Gmail or an Office 365, you've got a series of clouds there. If you're using Salesforce, there's clouds there. If you're using Oracle, you've got clouds there. If you're using a travel system like Concur, you've got clouds there. So it really is a hybrid world, a hybrid environment, and it is increasingly complex. But if you stick to the basics and you maintain a solid framework of risk and resilience measurement, you'll increase your likelihood of being able to successfully thrive and survive in today's cyber ecosystem.
Definitely. Let's go back to another topic. It's the talent in cybersecurity, right? There is no doubt that it's a concern, the lack of talent in cybersecurity. Can automation and orchestration take up some of the slack and make existing cybersecurity operators more effective?
Well, that is a really interesting question, and I thank you for asking it. As we take a look at cybersecurity, it's really a holistic issue that involves people, process, and technology. And certainly we have a growing measure of data that indicates that there are a lot of gaps organizations have, and it's very difficult to recruit and retain highly skilled cybersecurity personnel. One of the things that within the industry we look for is for technology to make the job easier. And by making the job easier and automating tasks in the processes, we can offset some of the gaps that we are currently seeing in the cyber workforce, but we can't eliminate them. So we need to really have a balanced approach where, yes, we want to automate as much as we can, but we also want to make sure that our automation makes the job easier for the humans and what I call the wetware, so that we have a great synchronization between the hardware, the software, and the wetware. And when we hit the sweet spot, Ricardo, we automate to the basic level and we make it easier for the humans, the wetware, to make informed decisions that can help the business grow and be protected from attack from the inside as well as the outside.
Cool. Now let's go to policy, right? And I'm sure you know that a good cybersecurity policy means nothing if it's not being executed, right?
Right.
And you're a master of that. How can you ensure that execution continuously improves and doesn't stagnate? Are there any key baseline or KPIs that needs to be monitored? What's your advice on that?
Well, boy, we could talk about this for a couple of hours, but I'll go back to complexity, the theme that I touched upon in the previous question. Complexity is the bane of security. And as a fan of Star Trek, I used to, I'm used to quoting Scotty, the chief engineer of Captain Kirk's crew, where he said in one of the films that the more you overthink the plumbing, the easier it is to stop up the drain. And when it comes to policies, we need to do a couple of things. First of all, we need to make our policies clear and concise. Nobody wants to read a phone book, a very thick book of policies, because it becomes increasingly difficult to implement all those policies. Rather, the folks that are the most successful, and our research indicates that if you can automate a lot of those policies and you can orchestrate them well, then you're taking the load off of the humans and you're putting it onto the machines that can act with great velocity and precision. That changes the role of the auditors in the process. And this is one of the things that, as the chair of ISACA, we're seeing the auditor community and the role of auditors actually changing from somebody who's actually doing paper audits to actually getting in and doing technology audits and working with the technologies. We're seeing the role of auditors and controllers actually evolving to take advantage of automation. And by doing that, we're seeing really great programming where folks are able to consume data from machines that are programmed to help feed you as to the status of your processes, the communication that's going on between your databases and between your individuals. There's rich data sources. We're seeing machine learning, artificial intelligence technology, all informing a really great transformation in how we implement and establish, audit, and control processes. And I expect in the next 5 years, you're going to see your auditors and your controllers, those typical, used to be all accountants, but now it's going to be largely automated. And you're going to see more and more of those folks that are in those career fields actually transitioning into more technical-based cybersecurity, data security-focused career fields. It's really an exciting time for folks as we see more and more automation helping us in the policy business.
Okay, cool. One of the things that we have seen from the thousands of customers that we're serving out there is the complexity of the upper management to understand the cybersecurity process because of the complexity that it involves at a technical level, right? And one of the things that they like is to get a specific KPI that tell them the level of communication that their network is having with adversarial infrastructure. It's easier for them to understand and eventually something that can lead us to an evolution in cybersecurity overseen from the management point of view. One last question, Greg. Let's say that we're having this conversation 5 years from now, right? What do you think will be the most relevant topics then for cybersecurity?
There's going to be a couple that are going to be on there. We're going to see questions about privacy, civil rights, and civil liberties percolating towards the top of the agenda. We're already seeing some hints at that, such as with Apple announcing their new program where they're going to be assessing throughout the database of the files that are stored in the Apple cloud for any evidence of child pornography. And that opens up a whole new conversation regarding privacy, civil rights, and civil liberties, because while child pornography is absolutely abhorrent and should not be tolerated at all, that same type of technology could be perverted into intrusive looks into your privacy and into your data files. So I think we're going to see a much more elevated conversation in the public's eye regarding privacy, civil rights, and civil liberties, not only here in the United States, but around the world. And I think it's a conversation that's overdue. I think you're going to see a great deal of businesses and governments expanding the use of artificial intelligence, remote process automation, and machines doing work that traditionally has been manual in process, as well as accelerating the insertion of artificial intelligence and machine learning into business processes around the globe. Third, I think we're going to see a much broader discussion from business continuity discussions as far as critical infrastructure and things like industrial control systems, SCADA, Internet of Things, and non-IT connected devices that can affect businesses, including operational technologies. Organizations that are in critical manufacturing, most of their manufacturing devices are in fact automated systems themselves, and they're increasingly being connected through internal networks and then ultimately exposed through the broader internet. So looking at that interconnected world and risk exposure will be driving conversation in boardrooms tomorrow and well into the next 3 to 5 years.
Outstanding, General Touhill. It's been great to have you joining this flash talk today. I want to thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your service again, and hope you had a great day.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. I appreciate you, and it was great seeing you again.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and until next time.